Hey everybody, welcome to another midweek conversation where we discuss this past Sunday's message, follow-up readings, any questions that you all may have, any questions that we have for one another as we've continued to chew on it and think on it. Really never know where the conversation's going to go. This one's a little different, even that we've got two sermons to go over since I was on vacation last week. And so we've got qualifications of elders, qualifications of deacons, which... My one question or thought really kind of ties the two together. So before we get to that, let me ask you, any thoughts from your sermon on diakonos, the office of deacon, or any questions from the sermon on elder?
There was only one thought from the sermon on deacons that didn't quite make it in, which is people will commonly ask, and we mostly addressed it, but what do deacons actually do? Like, what is the actual call of deacons? And in the fact that their office is set aside for the physical serving of the church, that can be a little vague. And I will admit that could be a little vague. There was only really one passage that I wanted to go to, and it's at the end of Jesus's delivering of a bunch of parables in Matthew. It's the one where he says that, you saw me naked, you clothed me, you saw me with food, or hungry and gave me food, all these things. Yep. He uses the word when he's telling the people that they did not serve him, did not minister to him is how we translate it, but they say, when were we not diakonos of you? When were we not deacons of you? And so that was where I was going to go to say, well, deacons are people who see someone hungry and give them food, naked, give them clothing, but it does encapsulate physically serving the church. But if you're wondering for specifics, anyone who's lacking something in the church or needing that physical care, that's what a deacon does. That's what they're called to tangibly do, to meet those needs.
Yeah, and I would say that it would be, in a way, unique to maybe the church you're serving as a deacon at.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you've got a ton of middle-aged families where, okay, we're not really getting into, sick and and we're not really looking at young families having babies, maybe the meal ministry isn't as common and prevalent. I mean, sure, you're still going to have people who are sick or in the hospital or things like that, but when you tend to think of taking food to people, it tends to be, hey, they just had a baby, let's take them, or okay, they're now struggling to go grocery shopping with themselves, obviously I'm speaking in large generalizations. So, but what I'm getting at is I think that within the deacon ministry, I know, even talking to friends who are pastors, we have different elements of our deacon board compared to some of my friends' deacon boards, and they have different elements of their deacon board compared to our deacon board, just based on where you live, what your congregation's like, and things like that.
Yeah, and how much family the congregation has in the area. We see Paul make a caveat for that widows, if they have family, should go to their family first and then go to the church and the deacons. And so there are a lot of specifics that we obviously can't speak to, but we can give examples of what our deacons do and how they care for people. Yeah,
I think there's a lot more. That's a good way of putting it. We can give examples of, hey, here's what our deacons do, because it makes sense in our church context.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more flexibility on some deacons do this, some deacons do that, some deacon, and so
there's not hard and fast rules necessarily.
Which I would say is a different, when you go to elders, it's really the Bible's very clear, hey, here are the 3 or 4 things that elders do.
Yeah.
This is what you do. Yeah. This is what an elder has to do. We don't see that same
strictness.
Yeah, we don't see that same strictness. We don't see that same quantity. We don't see the same parameters for deacon board. So I do think that there's a degree of, hey, if your church is healthy and biblically solid, don't feel like every deacon board has to look identical to every other deacon board.
Yeah. The best descriptor I heard that I didn't use was that if you see a church where leadership is unfocused, unstructured, and doing too much, that is a church that lacks what a deacon board is supposed to serve for. If we were doing everything in the church and everything flowed through us, we would have to say, oh, well, our deacon board is not taking care of what they're,
I was going to say, I know some church, my one buddy, they have trustees, but they're not trustees. They're just deacons.
Yeah.
Because it's they're serving for the physical needs of the whole church. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think that's a very legitimate, yeah, basically they're not serving for the physical needs of the congregation. They're serving for the physical needs of the building and the property.
Yeah.
And so I like, that would be a hill. Like if somebody was like, well, we need to pick a fight on, I'd be like, who cares?
Yeah.
Right. But that's a great example of like where that flexibility of, you want to call them trustees? Great. You want to say the trustees are under the deacon? Like, great. Okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
What's clear is there's an office and the qualifications matter. And I think that's where sometimes churches have created different levels of leadership, right? Because it's like, okay, here are the offices that we're going to elect to. And then here are the offices, or not offices, here are the positions that people can serve in that we don't have to worry about election, right? And like for our church, while we're talking about our context, and if anybody, I know I've had conversations with people who have asked me, hey, why do we have this? So if you've wondered this and never asked, hey, now you get to know. And if you've never wondered it, you get it anyway.
Yeah, you still get to know.
Right? Why we have trustees versus deacons. And I used a very, kind of lighthearted example, but somebody asked me one time, well, why aren't we electing trustees? And I said, well, because one, trustee isn't an office in the Bible. And two, are you really telling me that if we had a professional plumber show up to the church and we had a plumbing thing go wrong, we'd be like, wait a minute, you're not allowed to help because you haven't been elected to serve as a deacon?
We need to hold a congregational vote.
And they were like, oh, no, I would want the professional plumber. Oh, yeah, that's why we have trustees, right? Because it's like, hey, here are the guys who, you know what, maybe they're not looking at, the guys and the women, like whoever wants to be a trustee, like maybe they're not looking at the qualifications going, yeah, you know what, I think I meet those. But they're able to help with the physical property. And so we're not going to say, no, you can't do that. And on a logistical level, it's helpful to know who are the trustees so that if something goes wrong with the building, we know who to reach out to, and we have a chain of communication of like, hey, here are the people to let know about this, rather than just, so do I just grab any random person and say that gutter's falling down?
Yeah. Again, structure,
and, logistics, but that would be another level even below the outlined details in Scripture.
That does raise the question. We, obviously within the modern church, we have expanded not the offices, because offices are specifically elected, but we have more positions, if you will, than are laid out. Why are we allowed to do that but not take away positions? Like, why would it be improper of us to take away a deacon board, but we can add a
governing board or a trustee board? Yeah, that's a great question. I think it falls kind of within, and this is where I will concede that if someone really wanted to push me on this or push our church on this, they would have an argument to do so, right? This is where I would say it falls under wise stewardship, going back to what you talked about in Acts, right? Of, hey, this work's not getting done. We need people to take care of this work, and we can't do it.
Yeah.
And so, right, like we mentioned, we have the trustee board. Okay, well, why do we have the trustee board? Because we have people who are very good at working on the property, who are not, by their own admission, they're not thinking through, oh, so-and-so's funeral's coming up, we should make sure that there's a meal and flour, you know what I mean? Like, okay, so then let's let you guys focus on this so that our deacons can focus on this.
Yeah.
Because we would have people serving as deacons who are like, don't call me if there's a problem with the lighting fixture. Yeah. I cannot do electrical work, right?
Yeah.
All of that is operating under, like you observed in the sermon, the deacon board does not replace or supplant the elder board. So all of that is operating within the elders. So the structure as laid out by Scripture of, hey, the elders are ruling over the church, leading over the church, guiding and directing the church. Within that, I believe we have grounds to say what is proper stewardship, to let people focus where they are truly called to focus and serve. And so then you have the governing board, which this is not, we're not like the only church with this, but I've got tons of friends who they don't have a governing board or anything like this. So our governing board, you've got a deacon representative, a trustee representative. I serve as the elder representative. And then we also elect members from the congregation. And so that, again, I would also say falls within the parameters of wise stewardship and giving the leadership flexibility to say, hey, here's what's enabling the church to function at its best. So the governing board is thinking about not the spiritual needs of the congregation, not the physical needs of the congregation. They're thinking about the logistics of existing. I mean, I used this language one time, and I had a pastor scold me. He's like, you can't use that language. And I said, why? This is like, we are a corporate structure. We have to think about payroll and budgeting and expenditures. And you know what I mean? Like, but that doesn't fall under, like, the elders need to know and are aware of it. And I bring a report to the elders. The deacons need to know and are aware of it. But we don't want the elders to stop teaching so that they can make a decision on, okay, we need to do a boiler replacement. Which of these three options? Like, no, you guys focus on the health of the spiritual of the church, right? We don't want the deacons to stop focusing on the people so that they can talk about the legit, like, no, you guys focus on the people. And so the governing board is then able to take what is given to them by the elders and then subsequently by the deacons and stuff, and enable every group to focus on what it needs to focus on. If you're, and that's honestly, it's by a grace of God thing that we're big enough that we have enough people who can serve in these different areas. Another really practical nicety of having a governing board is it increases ownership of the church. Since we are electing members from the congregation, I love talking to people who haven't been on the governing board, are elected to serve on the governing board, and seeing how that helps their perspective change and helps them understand the church on a deeper level. And so I think that's really valuable. And it's also a way that we are making sure we're getting multiple perspectives on a decision, right? If the only perspective is the elder perspective, okay, that's one thing. Well, no, we have the elder perspective and the deacon perspective. Okay. And on the governing board, we also get to have the pure just congregant in the seat perspective. You know what I mean? And so I believe that that's created a really nice balance. And I think it falls within the scope of, hey, as you're shepherding the flock, what does the flock need? I don't see anything in Scripture that prohibits us from, like you said, if we were messing with the qualifications, if we were taking away biblical offices, that's problematic. I don't see anything prohibitive in Scripture that says you can't set up subcommittees, if you will.
Yeah, I think you phrased it really well of what does the flock need. And Scripture has told us that the flock needs elders. The flock needs deacons. And so we would be irresponsible to take away those offices. And within those offices, we do have the ability to steward and say, okay, what other emphases come up? Because in the early church, they wouldn't have had building maintenance. All the buildings were owned by Rome. And so they didn't,
or they were meeting in someone's living room.
Or they were meeting in someone's house. Yeah. So they didn't have these other things to take care of necessarily that we do. We have business stuff that we have to take care of and things, and property management that we have to take care of. That would be Act 6 would be a distraction for the other offices and boards. What was you said you have a question.
So, and this is a dangerous question. So let me acknowledge this is a dangerous question. And so what I mean by dangerous question is I think it's a good question for us to all reflect on personally. I think it's dangerous when we try and answer it for other people. And so I'm going to ask you a question, and I don't want you to answer it for other people. I want you to reflect in your own life. As I've been asking myself this question, I've been reflecting on my own. So as you watch this video, don't try and answer this question for other people. That's where the danger comes in. Reflect on it. And I'll give and I can even go first so as not to make you throw an unfair question at you. But one of the questions I want to talk about is, why do we tend to overemphasize one office versus another? When I have done so, what have I seen in my own life that I'm doing, or that I'm wrongly focusing on? And how do we make sure that we're not overemphasizing one versus the other? Like for me, it was even a big one learning back in college was when my understanding of pastor and elder really started to change in college. And I would have at one point in life told you, well, there's a very big, elders are like leaders, but not, the pastor is the real, and then realizing no, poimene equals presbyteros equals episkopos. Like there's no difference. And for me, it was because I wasn't taking the time to understand everything behind the scenes. So I was just operating purely on what do I see?
Yeah.
So I'm seeing Pastor Neil, Pastor Brian, right? Like Pastor Rob. I'm seeing those three guys visible on a regular basis. And so so for me, it was I'll call it a laziness that caused me to wrongly elevate one position versus the other. Same thing in the same way that, okay, now you would see the elders teaching classes and Bible studies and things like that. So it was like, okay, well, like, so there's the pastors at the top, then there's the elders, and then like deacons, whatever, who cares?
Who knows
right?
what the
who
deacons
knows?
do?
Like, and for me, it was a laziness of, I haven't taken the time to understand how valuable each of those are. You know, like I would have said, well, you could remove the deacons and whatever, who cares?
Right. And then that's the ultimate danger, right?
And if you had to, you could get rid of the elders because you still have the pastors.
Yeah.
And then realizing as I matured and grew and studied it and really read into it of like, oh no, that's like, I love asking people the question like, well, like which of your car's tires is most valuable? Like which one could we just get rid of? Right. So that was also,
I've actually got an extra tire in the middle that helps me go.
So I'll answer first and say that for me, I was wrongly elevating offices in terms of value to the church and priority, you know, like, well, these people are better than these people.
Just by visibility.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think that, again, not to speak for everyone, but I do think that is probably the hardest temptation, is just visibility. You know, especially, like, it's helped me a lot getting into ministry to change that perspective, even with the fact that, like, we are both elders. Like, obviously, you are the lead, so you are over me, but we are both elders. We both serve as elders. When we're at elder meetings, it's not like my perspective gets thrown out for yours.
Get one vote, you get half a vote or something, yeah.
And so even that was very eye-opening, that though you are the more visible, I was able to understand just in my own role, oh wait, I'm not. Like, I am serving in a similar capacity, same capacity. And so researching deacons this week, it was the refreshing reminder that though deacons serve underneath the elder board, right? We don't want to get rid of all the distinctions.
we're not changing church structure.
Though they serve in that capacity underneath the elder board, they are, for one, again, as we did in the sermon, if you cross-reference the qualifications, you realize deacons are very qualified people.
Remarkably
and
similar.
Even the first qualification is that their life is worthy of honor. Mm-hmm. And so for us, I think the issue comes in when we start to distinguish, like, because he's visible, he's more worthy of honor. Mm-hmm. Because he's visible, he's clearly more valuable within the church. Because, you know, and again, as I pointed out, like, we would be wrong to call our deacons to preach. If they wanted to, absolutely, we shouldn't take away the opportunity. But, you know, we're not going to go to Adam Richards and be like, you have to preach.
You're a deacon, you got to get up there.
That would be unbiblical of us.
Yep.
And therefore, it's also super unbiblical of us to say, well, you're less valuable because you're not preaching. Because it's like, well, that's not part of their duties.
I would say the same thing about elders, right? That was a distinction we made in the sermon on elders, is that the qualification is able to teach, not has to. Yeah. I would say I would be just as wrong to go to an elder and be like, hey, you have to get up there and preach. Be like, well, no, I'm able to. I just don't feel like, no, you have to because you're an elder. Like, no, that's equally an error. And so then it would be equally an error to say, okay, well, he's a less valuable elder because he doesn't preach.
Yeah. And so I think the times that I've done it in my own life, it's been, like you said, laziness. Visibility is, I think, kind of the ultimate one that it falls back to. And also not knowing what the offices do. You know, like, there would have been a time where I was younger where I wouldn't have known what the deacons did. No. And therefore I didn't give them much thought. And so when we would elect a deacon, I would be like, yeah, sure, whatever, right? Whatever. And looking back now, it's like, well, that's not a healthy perspective as a church member at all, to not care about someone serving in an elected office. And clearly it was on me for not knowing, what's this person going to be doing? What are they going to be responsible for? What are they qualified based off of?
What are they qualified based off of? Oh my goodness, right? Like when I first heard of the deacon board, it was like, like, oh, meal train or whatever. So I'm like, okay, well, the qualification for a deacon is like, are they a good cook?
Yeah.
Right. I don't want bad food being brought to my house. Like,
and how tempting that can be to diminish their role and think, well,
and so I think it's that slow down and understand the value of the office, slow down and understand the qualifications of the office. Right. What I really love is we've elected deacons at different times since I've been here. And when I've gone to them and said, hey, somebody came to me, they told me they were nominating you. Did they come to you first? Yeah, they did. Do you have any questions? Yeah, I was reading through the qualifications and I want to make sure. And I'm like, oh man, like that makes my heart so happy, right? That our deacons are considering, do I meet the qualifications? So that's, I think it really comes down to a patience, right? Like, yeah, it's going to take a little bit extra work. Yeah, it's going to take a little extra time, but take the time to make sure you really understand.
Yeah. And it's really cool. Again, in our church, we have people who've served as both.
Yep.
And that shows that there is a necessity of qualification for both. Yep. That we can say, well, because they've served as a deacon, they clearly meet some of the qualifications for elder already, and that again shows that these are not leagues apart. No. They're very similar and in a structured way, where we need to treat both of them with respect. Yeah. And again, I think when we don't, it comes down to not understanding, not understanding the structure. Because once we do, there's no reason to disrespect an office that God has given respect to.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, once you understand how God has laid it out, the alternative is, it's in there in black and white.
Yeah.
So are you going to obey it or just toss it out the window?
Yeah.
And that's pretty easy. That should be hopefully a pretty easy answer for all of us.
Yeah. Ultimately, we need to ask ourselves, if God places value upon the deacon boards, shouldn't I? If God places value on elder qualifications, shouldn't I? And we need to be willing to say, yes, yes, I should. Yep. I should take time and understand them.
Goes back to one of my favorite quips to make, right? Satan's first tactic was, did God really say, continues to ask the church, did God really say, there are plenty of times where the church needs to go, yup, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, we'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for a midweek conversation. If you missed this sermon that this related to, you can find it down below. Otherwise, if you want to make sure you stay up to date on all our content and resources, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.